what I want to there we go. What I want to do is I want to share these next two books that I read with both of you, and see what you think. Um, if we can
Okay.
get this, let's. Oh, there we go. The first one I'm almost finished reading this. This is an excellent book. It's called The Will to See. And it's by Bernard Henry Levy. He's a philosopher journalist from France, obviously, and he has been around the world. He's traveled all over the place, and in this book he explains why he travels, why he goes abroad, and what he has seen. And for me, the thing that was most impactful was when he went to Nigeria, and he explained through interviews with some of the kids what, not just Boko Haram, but a group called the Fulani, what they've been doing to these people is horrendous. And these are things that don't make the U.S. media, unfortunately. But this just came out a couple of months ago. I highly recommend it. It's only 192 pages, but he talked about Kurdistan, of course, and Nigeria, and several other locations. I think it's worth taking a look. And he has an interesting take on international. He doesn't say international education, but he has enough descriptors there that I think the field can say, look, hey, well, one, I think they should have this guy actually speak at a NAFTA conference, but we don't know if that will ever happen. But he has a really unique insight that I think really aligns nicely with what international education is all about. So if you have a chance, and if you don't write this down, I'll email it to you. It's a very good book. Now, the next one I finished a month ago. I mean, it's much more polemic, and let's see what you think when I click it there. I'll move it. It's called The Case for Rage, and this is a professor. She's a philosophy professor, and this is primarily a U.S. centric, this book. But she says The Case for Rage. She is justifying using anger in anti-racist struggles, and she made me think. She actually classifies different types of anger. Your righteous anger, narcissistic rage, resentment rage, and things like this, which really was an experience. It was an education for me. I hadn't thought about these things along those lines. But what I did think, though, as international education is really working more closely with anti-racist movements and DEI, you have to look at some components that may not be compatible. Like, for example, anger. Because if we look at international education, we don't really look at anger, right? It's all about diplomacy, understanding, cross-cultural communication, working together. How does anger fit into that? I think that's something that the international education field has to look at. Say, look, can we use anger? I don't know. Like I said, I read this book a month ago, and I'm still thinking about these things. That's how good of a book it is. Because if you're still thinking about it a month after you read it, I think it's very good. And she bases a lot of this on the feminist. Her name's Audre Lorde. I don't know if you've heard of her. I hadn't heard of her until this book, but I will be reading a little bit more of her. So this is something I present to you both. If you want to read it whenever you have time, or Brianna, if you ever want to introduce a book for like a discussion in the office or something like that, I think this would be it, because boy, I had a lot of questions come up and made me question some things that how I view certain things. I think it's a good book. Again, this is only like 179 pages, so it's not too long of a read. But boy, it's very impactful. And I think, again, this would be interesting. And Dave and I have talked about who would be good guest speakers at a NAFTA conference. I think she would be. I think she would really be, and she really would make international educators look at how we view things. And
yeah,
it's a very interesting book. Like I said, it got me thinking, and I haven't stopped thinking about some of the ways that she presented these arguments. Was very good. So I hope down the road, maybe the two of you can read these books and see what you think.
Yeah, I'll check them out for sure. I've been in a little bit of a rut and not reading, and I need to kind of pick that back up. So these would be good for that, compared to a lot of the other stuff that I read, which are just kind of plenty of IE reports and public, diplomacy kind of stuff for the research side. But I need something that's a little bit different for sure.
Yeah, it's good to get out. I think I just do that just to stay on top. I think me. I think about things in all different directions. I go all over the place. But it's not a bad thing sometimes. I think you can you'll see my next slide is something is something I'm trying to do here in Rochester, and it's involving racquetball and international education. So let's see. There you go. These two are, by the way, two of the best players in New York State, Josh Bentley and Dave Zini. But racquetball, it's a great sport, but unfortunately, it's a dying sport. As more and more gyms expand, they either convert racquetball courts into storage centers or into new weightlifting rooms, which is too bad. This is a great sport. You work on reflexes, movement, and hand-eye coordination, court movement. It's wonderful. But what we're doing right now is I've been working for the last 6 months with an organization called Keeping Our Promise, which works with Afghan immigrants to the States. So we work and we find places for them to live. We find them jobs. So right now we've just started having them play racquetball, and it's really interesting. We have someone from RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, come and teach some of these immigrants how to play racquetball, and it's both men and women. And so it's really interesting to see, because sometimes language is an issue, but that's the beauty of doing something like this with a sport. Because sometimes where words can't express what you're trying to do, you can still find another way, an example or gesture, just hitting the ball. So that's been fun. I've enjoyed doing that, because in a way they're helping injecting new blood into racquetball, and we're trying to help find another way for these Afghans to integrate themselves into the community. So Brianna, I want to ask you, do you do anything similar like that at the University of Nebraska, or what's the scene like in New Mexico? I'm sorry, Mexico City. What am I saying, New Mexico?
You'll have to forgive me. So in terms of what exactly are we doing? Exactly what? This is an interesting kind of metaphor here, but can you give me a little bit more detail about what we're doing? What you're asking?
Well, no. It's just a casual question, because I always think, I've always thought that international education should not be limited to just the international education professionals. I think
Right.
you can involve other peoples. I've had policemen come involved or something, even taxi drivers. Meet my students.
Yeah.
Basically,
Sure. No, that's. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, but yes, I would say definitely we do. Especially being where I am in the university, so not kind of international education at large.
Sure.
I work within the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources, and so we do try to bring in professionals all the time. So folks from other industries outside of academia primarily, because I mean, yes, academia is a pathway for some students, but it's not going to be a common pathway per se. And so it's been great to be able to pull in kind of folks who do international work in many fields. We've done a lot of kind of governmental work, like or governmental speakers. Like I have a colleague at the Mexico City office of the U.S. Foreign Agricultural Service, and he's spoken about how his career path has taken him from like the military and utilizing his linguistic skills to now in the kind of economics field, and how he's able to kind of have that really cool career in that way. But we try to pull in folks from a really wide variety of areas, whether they're working internationally at the moment or working in Nebraska locally, because that's a goal for a lot of students, is maybe to have an international experience, but to come back, work maybe a little bit closer to home and family in the long run. And so have also had, students who did a year abroad studying at a university elsewhere in the world, and they come in and talk about, or it's an individual who's second in command for our state Department of Agriculture. And she talks about how her German language skills and her kind of understanding of German culture and her participation in the Model UN kind of group there at her university in Germany have impacted her success in her, capacity in her career right now. So, sorry, I had to kind of pop off for something while you were right before you asked the question. So, my apologies to not answer it correctly, but that's kind of a little bit in terms of pulling in some other disciplines into the fray.
Well, it's that I remember when I was working at Emmanuel College in Boston. I remember I first started thinking about this because we had celebrated International Education Week. And I remember it was like toward the end, and we had all these international flags up. And I heard this Emmanuel student say, "Look, why are all these flags up? International Education Week is all over." And so for many people, they think, well, we celebrate international education or internationalism for 1 week, and then that's it. The rest of the year, we focus on something else. And I think the best way around that is just involving members of the community, and we'll see how that goes. Just to have them meet people, because like I said, Mike, who teaches the racquetball, he's never been to Afghanistan. He certainly doesn't speak Pashto or Gadi, so it's an experience for him, and it's an experience for them. But not just that. If we talk about the gender issues, we have both men and women playing at the same time, learning at the same time. So there's a lot going on, and I think it's fun to do, really. So we'll have to see how that goes. It's just I don't think we'll produce a state champion but that's not the point. It's just exposing people to the sport, and meeting people. About 2 years ago, I tried something similar, but with curling, and that might have been a mistake, because that was I didn't realize how hard curling is, and keeping score too, and that was tough. But if you ever try curling, you'll know what I mean at some point. But I think it's always good to have these type of events. I think where it's not just international educators, but other people who can make a contribution in some way. I think that's a lot of fun. Okay, Dave, any thoughts on your part?
No, sorry, I was interrupted a little bit with the service.
No, that's all right.
I covered, so I had to go get them hooked up downstairs. At Columbia College Chicago, it's really, I'm still kind of building kind of from the ground up. They had a strategic plan probably about 6 years ago, brought everything together.
Right.
I came from U Chicago, been here 4.5 years now, and 3 years ago, right around 3 years ago now, it was right before the NAFSA 2019 conference, they disbanded the office after. So they laid a bunch of people off, and it went from an office of 11 to 1, and I'm the lucky one that survived. Thankful that I was able to keep my job. And then during COVID, I was at part-time status for 50 weeks. And the 40% pay cut that came with that. So all that is to say, there was a lot that we really needed to kind of be enhanced, that we were going to kind of tackle as a group. After I kind of worked out the international student scholar services side of things, make sure that we were doing what we needed to do there,
right,
and tidy things up. And then with everything disbanded, it's really kind of still at this point, just because of the disruption with COVID, really building new application processes, looking at the back end of the infrastructure, just really building it all up. So I haven't had time professionally within enhancing what we're doing in Columbia, because now it's kind of separate again, and the bandwidth with me just being the one person to look beyond anything other than the finding some new partners and that kind of strategic thinking. But it's really at somewhat the ground level with so much stuff that I'm doing and processes that we were doing some of this kind of programming and thinking, trying to engage the community, trying to engage the campus community, the South Loop area in Chicago. And then they disbanded everything, and I just can't. I don't have that bandwidth to focus on, unfortunately. And that's another part that's kind of depressing too of my current situation, is because I don't have time to do those kinds of things, to try, right, and to bring people together and to focus on, and to try to engage new faculty in what they're doing. That's starting, but it's at a different kind of focus level as well. It's just trying to get those folks, other faculty, interested in leading programs and encouraging students to get abroad, and just trying to find who the allies are that are internationally focused, that haven't done much with the office. So that's kind of where I am right now. And that's why things like NAFSA Inform are helpful, right? I could certainly do this via, what I'm reading and connecting with a few colleagues, but to be able to really be at these venues to talk some of this stuff through is it's really important for me and helpful. And I think eventually I'll be at that point. I might be able to hire another staff, but that'll just alleviate some of the additional work that I'm doing. That's, literally killing me probably with all the stress, right? Like, it's unfortunate. I laugh, but it is what it is. So I'm hopeful that if that can happen, that we can kind of begin to branch out beyond just kind of the nitty gritty nuts and bolts, running the programs and making sure that we're doing everything that we need to do, within standards of good practice, and then being able to kind of think more creatively. So we're not at that point anytime in the next, over the summer by any means, right? I mean, I've had some people reach out about speakers. It's like, I just forward them on because I can't even host. I can barely find time to host a Fulbright info session that I'm now the Fulbright advisor for, let alone any other type of kind of engagement with our students and staff and faculty. So alas, living the dream I am.
Well, Brianne, have you ever been to a NAFSA conference? Or
So I actually have not.
okay.
My role prior to last year was less student focused and more kind of on the larger institutional global aspect. I know that sounds a little odd, but we just have enough going on in the global space that, we had someone who was primarily in the role that I'm in now. We have someone who is focused more on faculty and research and capacity building programs in the global space. And then I was kind of doing things across the board. And so I didn't have as much kind of really specific and direct student interaction and job responsibilities, but now I do. And so it's possible I may be at an AFSA in the future, but it also may not be. It depends on where it is in the country, how much it costs to get there, whether I happen to be in Nebraska at the time or not, around the time that it would be going on. So I always do find a lot of value in kind of hearing about and engaging in some of the side conversations and kind of engaging in the topics that do come up around it. As I see people, like we've kind of talked about, post on LinkedIn and engage some discussions as you're doing, which I really appreciate this, because I think this could have a lot of value for a lot of folks, whether they're going or not, because I know some of those conferences can be so overstimulating and overwhelming in terms of you meet so many people, you have so much to take in, and you don't really have as much time to really dig in to some of these things and make the more intentional connections in such an intense sort of environment.
That it's a perfect segue into my next question. Is like I don't know how long you've worked in the field of international education, Brianne, but what observations or what tendencies or patterns or what have you noticed in the field? Are they good things or bad things?
Yeah, sure. So I have been in education or in international education kind of more broadly in higher ed anyway for almost 6 years now. Not always as laser focused on the student side of things and the kind of physical mobility kind of aspect, which is a lot of the focus most of the time. But in terms of some things I've observed, I mean, something that's kind of a little bit not encouraging and a bad direction is the idea that, just because the pandemic is kind of fading more into, I mean, it's still very much happening, but because we're still having the chance to do more travel and have less restrictions, that we should only refocus on study abroad and physical mobility. Those are clearly very important and incredibly impactful experiences. But for me, it feels like a missed lesson and a missed opportunity to have learned a ton from the pandemic period, but from the lessons that maybe got brought to light during the course of the pandemic, in terms of that it's not just when a global, emergency is happening that we can't do these things. These things are not available to many students, and for many more reasons than maybe most of us will admit or acknowledge. And what can we do to focus on real access and inclusivity and real impact beyond just, okay, I mean, in my college, we have 2-week programs, and those are neat. They're really great. They can be a great introductory sort of experience. But they're really unsustainable in terms of times like this, where a person can get COVID and then the whole trip is down the drain. They're really expensive for what you're getting out of it, and the impact is kind of limited in all honesty. And I want us to be looking at things that are really like moving the needle in terms of changing the way students look at the world, really impacting the way they can have global mindsets and competencies and the ways they can bring those things to their work and be more employable and be better additions to their companies and organizations. I think we can do that in lots of ways and not just go back to business as usual because it's what we've known in the past.
That is really well said. I think we may have to have NASA invite you to speak, because I think those are all is spot on. I think one thing that struck me years ago, well, there's two things really. When I was still working with BCA, I had called the College of the Menominee Nation, which is a tribal college in Wisconsin. And I asked, can I come there to talk about study abroad? And the person who talked to me said, look, we didn't think this is for us. We think this is just for white people. I thought, whoa, that was one. And then it was like a couple years later, we were promoting our online application forms. And it was an HBCU that we were reaching out to. And they said, look, Tom, don't assume that every student has access to a computer or that they own a computer. By virtue of having this online application, you are discriminating in a way. And I said, I hadn't thought about that either. So I think what you're saying, Brianna, it's exactly, it's what needs to be said. It's what the field needs to look at. We survived through this pandemic, but what lessons have we learned from it? I'm not too sure some schools have really learned any lessons. When I went to Ireland, I was just telling David, I went to Ireland last week. I was the only one on the plane who had a mask on. Everyone else had, they didn't. I said, look, you just have to, you have to be careful. I think we could make this a good experience. Not a good experience, but we could learn something from the pandemic. And I'm not really convinced that everyone really is learning or wants to learn from it. We have to make it much more inclusive. I think for some time now, the question I would say to the field, all right, how are you reaching out to the HBCUs and tribal colleges? I haven't seen too much, really. I don't know, maybe you both have, I haven't. How are you reaching out to them? Right now, Abroadia is trying to do a COIL program with a tribal college in South Dakota and the University in Bolivia. And that's fun, but I mean, this should be much more often. This should not be a unique, special thing. This should take place much more often. Yeah, I mean, the field has a ways to go. I just have to see. I think like you and I think like David, I'm glad I'm not at NAFSA this week, because I remember going to to a couple of these conferences, and my back would hurt, my feet would hurt, because you're up standing all day practically. Sometimes I lose my voice, and it's just, and it is almost overstimulation. I think it's not a bad thing, the NAFSA conference. I think it's, when I do go back, I won't go back every year. It'd be maybe every other year, because you need to really, for budgetary reasons, but also just for your mental health. It's a lot. So we'll have to see how things go at this conference.
Yeah, I think go ahead. No, sorry, please.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I agree with you, Tom, and appreciate that kind of suggestion for all of us to keep in mind. I've taken a lot of value from a number of ongoing kind of almost like NAFSA spread out, like way spread out, sort of, or just distributed a little bit. There's a great like monthly COIL webinar that I attend, that's put on by SUNY New York, and it is just a great way to pull in colleagues from all over the world at very, very financially viable, because it's free. True North International, or Intercultural, has been doing some really great work pulling people together to talk about intercultural education and development. And I'm just finding that those are incredibly useful to network and to learn and to have meaningful kind of conversations and really focus intentionally on just one topic at a time, and kind of spread that learning and that connection and that development out a little bit more. And to me, that's a lot more manageable and more impactful.
Absolutely.
I've been involved with focusing on underrepresentation and diversifying the student profile, going abroad, or having international opportunities and engagement opportunities almost since the beginning of my time in the field, which is now, I started in 2000. So been doing that for a while. There's a lot more focus, but we're still not seeing significant changes. It's been very small and incremental, and maybe that's how change with these things actually happens. I don't know, because there's been a lot of, I think at Diversity Abroad, and there's been some other smaller organizations, and then there's been, there's just a lot going on. So I think for me, that's one thing that I kind of notice and pay attention to. Even though I've not been writing or compiling the data as much as I used to, I still kind of pay attention, and I would like to see some of those changes happen much more. As I think everyone in the field
Yeah.
does, or at least should, right? But I do think that there's some outreach with I think the forum has some fellowships or things like that for colleagues from HBCUs, maybe tribal colleges as well. I'm not sure. The other thing that I guess that's really kind of concerning me, and Tom, I'm kind of vocal on Twitter sometimes. I like to say things to NAFSA and just in general about the field and to spark thinking and debate and conversation. And so I've been several years ago, I posted, it was, I forgot what NAFSA was, but you could really see the entire kind of expo hall. And I posted, who's here for that? And I put like a pound sign, a euro, a dollar, and the yen, and who's here for the purpose of what we do, right? It's a very smart ass thing to post, right? And all people at the conference certainly didn't see it, but it was on my mind and I needed to say it. I like money. I need to have a roof over my head and to feed my kids and to send them to school and things like that. So the financial piece is not lost on me. I think from an international student perspective, there's so much counting the international students as monetizing them. And yes, when you admit students, you get money, but let's not make that the main kind of focus on why you're admitting international students. And so that's always been a concern for me, and that's been going on for a long time. That's not really been new. I think there's a lot more there's private equity coming into the field, has been for a while. I think the two bigger 20, 25-year-old now organizations, they kind of merged together. There was some private equity funds that brought them together. They have a new CEO who I met at a forum reception. He seems great. But it's like it's interesting, this kind of dynamic and how the field is changing. And so part of me is also like, this was the time for NAFSA to make this change. I don't agree with increasing the price and adding this virtual piece that I'm not going to attend or don't have, let me piecemeal just the in-person one or both or the virtual, but that's not going to change. So eventually I'll have to bite the bullet and go. And I understand why they did it, but it's kind of much more focus on the money, right? We need to have funds to travel to go to these conferences, right? And they're not inexpensive beyond the conference registration. And then if you add workshops or whatever, for that professional development side of it, and then the hotel and food. And so we need these resources, but I don't, a conversation I had with a colleague long time ago, a senior colleague who's now retired, and he said, well, we don't work with any providers unless they're nonprofit. And I thought, I get that, but you realize some nonprofits act like for-profits, right? It's just a tax reporting structure. It's not like, there's nonprofits that we think of nonprofits, and then there's nonprofits in education. What we're doing is not necessarily, they're all for profit because they have to, pay staff to make safe programs, to go and do these things, with the various providers. But some of them, they are very expensive, and and yes, they give millions in scholarships and all that, but they're still raking in. You go to their IRS 990 and you can see what the salary is of some of these folks. And it's like, wow, impressive. Why don't you lower that? You're making a pretty penny, and that's why your programs are so expensive and why I'm not going to send my students on your program. Right? I don't know how to have those conversations at NAFSA. It's like, yeah, you're great, but it's out of reach for my students. And that's just the reality. So we're looking for, I'm not even at the point for looking at new providers really, because like I said, I'm just trying to get things set across the board. We'll be doing that soon, but that's the next focus, right? And I have to internally think there's a lot that goes on, right? With that's a fit for my institution, but also what I think about them, right? And what is, and I think everyone's doing fine. I'm not, I think everyone's worthy of being, I don't think anyone's doing anything nefarious, but I do think that there's, I look at talking about NASA and the cost and everything, a great thing that Bill Gertz and Pello did at for CIA and Bill's at AIFS. They just announced last week, press release, and it was on Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth, that for the next 3 years, they're going to put into a foundation that they kind of jointly put together for $100,000. So they're each going to contribute $50,000. The parameters aren't set for anything like that. It's just at the initial announcement. It's going to be for next year, and it's to go to NASA, Foreign Education Broader Diversity Abroad conferences for those that can't go. And so I don't know if it'll be like smaller grants of 500 to cover a registration or more, but that's significant. And I imagine that would be, knowing Bill, I've never met Mr. Pell, but I would imagine that they would be open that it could be someone from another provider, like a small provider, right? That's kind of starting out, not one of the big competitors. It's like, we know how much your CEO is making, right? I saw it on your 990. You guys could fork over the cost for this, but so that's kind of where I am now. I think I'm okay not being at NAFSA. I'm missing seeing all my friends post and colleagues post that they're there. For me, I've always loved them. I'm exhausted, but I do it from 8 in the morning or whenever I have in a meeting till late at night, right? I go all out, and it's kind of therapeutic for me on many levels. On the research side, talking about it, certainly the practical side, but then also the socializing and network side, right? Like so many people are now my friends in the field because I've been seeing them for 20 years and on committees and stuff. And so it's really hard for me, but I'm sticking by my guns. I didn't go to NASA. Again, I'll maybe go in the future. But I really like what that joint CIE AIFS. I mean, I think that gives me not hope, not like I'm lost on the field. I'm not looking to leave the field by any means. But it was really refreshing and nice to see that they recognize this. And Bill and I have talked about this for several years now on Twitter, and I talked to him at the Forum Conference. And so it was really genuine, and it's important, and they get it, right? And so, and that's counter to everything I said about private equity coming in. It's like, that's fine. Everyone wants to put dollars in their pocket, but let's see how things are changing when these things are happening. And I guess it's the evolution. I mean, I'm a researcher scholar in the field, and Joseph Mestenhauser out of Minnesota, NASA president, very early on. He's just a legend. I had the fortune of crossing paths with him a few times and being on things. And he copied me on a letter to Marlene Johnson, previous NASA CEO. And it's like, everything's turning into a trade. It's a trade. International Educators, a trade magazine. No one from the field is writing. So these thoughts from mine have been going on for 10 years as I've watched the field change, but those are the biggest concerns.
Well, no, you touched on a lot of things there. I'm just going to put up a name of a guy I've been following. His name is Patrick Lessinger. I don't know if you know him, David.
I'm connected to him, on at least LinkedIn and
yeah, me too. He writes a lot of really interesting things about higher education. I'd love to see him speak at a NAFSA conference because he's from outside the community, but he has a really unique perspective. I'll just tell you one of the things I'm struggling with right now, just so you know, Brianne, Abroadia is still a very small study abroad provider. But last year I was on pandemic unemployment insurance because we had no students, so I had no source of income. But now New York State is hitting me so hard. I have to prove to them that I was a business before the pandemic. I have all these documents I have to fill out, and basically I can see where they're coming from. They're going after these scam artists who've been trying to use the pandemic funds. But man, these things are hard, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself, but this is an experience that most other providers don't have because they're very well established. They're big, and they have big coffers. But it would just be nice if the field could recognize these type of experiences and say, look, hey, some of our providers, some of our colleagues are going through this, blah, blah, blah. We just haven't seen that. I think it basically comes down to, I don't know, empathy maybe, or something. I don't want to say solidarity, but just understand, and Dave and I have been talking about this for years about international educators who've lost their jobs. Once you lose your job, it's hard. It's stressful. I've gone through 2 layoffs. It's not easy, and I always tell the story because it's sort of amusing, but when I first got laid off at Emmanuel College, this one guy who he works in their hazard education, he emailed me and he said, look, Tom, since you're no longer going to be working in the field, can you please send me all your contacts? And I said, no, because it's such an inappropriate question because I just lost my job.
Right.
But there are people like that, unfortunately, they're emotionally tone deaf. They don't understand it. So these things that you've said, Rian and David, they're really relevant to the field. I think the field needs to keep addressing them, and they've made progress. What Bill's doing at AIFS and CIEE with funding people to go to these conferences, that's a great first step. That's inspiring. And let's hope the rest of the field follows suit and really make this inclusive. I think for me, it's some of these publishers that charge $200, $300 for a book in international education, that has to change. Right there, you're that price you're making it exclusive, because I wouldn't, even if I could afford that, I wouldn't pay that. That's too much, and I'd like to see more of these books go. If we really are inclusive, they should go online, make them ebooks. It's not hard to do, but a $300 price tag for a book is absolutely ridiculous.
It is. I've done some writing, and I'm not for one. I'm kind of exhausted by being a solo operation for 3 years now, but that's a big part of it. I wrote something like a foreword for the undergraduate research abroad book. So it wasn't a chapter nor an intro, but it was with NASA, and I wasn't going to get paid, but just kind of how that all went down. And I'm very green. So going, I do, like, it was hard not getting my physical copy of the book and then just getting the PDF, but there's some other things. And it's like, I'm just kind of done doing some of that until just seeing how things shake out. I mean, the field is it's a great, one of the reasons I love the field is that we are very supportive of each other, even though when there's competition going on. I mean, there's a lot of other dynamics that I'm not, that happen that I'm not blind to, but overall, I think the field it's why I'm in the field. There's so many components, and that's one of them. That we are just supportive of others in the field, and there's a lot more collaboration. But I do think that there could be even more, and trying to support those that can't go because of the institutions just can't cover it, or providing other types of resources that maybe it's a discount on a book. Okay, maybe not the $200-$300, but if you have a small budget, like, prove it. It's like, I'll screenshot my budget. It's paltry. It's really paltry. And so do I qualify for a reduced, on the book? So I don't know. It's as a researcher, I'm just kind of paying attention right now, just kind of what would be my next focus on presenting. Is it like a major critique? I don't want to do that, really, right? I mean, I'm all for reception, but, like, man, those things are pricey too, right? I mean, to put on. And so I think, but I get that it does help the organizations, thank, colleagues that have and schools and and their valuable partners, and an opportunity to get more. So, I think that they're fine, but it's just some of them, I just kind of sit back and think, boy, you make a lot of money and you're spending a lot of money on this, and I'm not seeing anything really unethical or illegal. I'm not saying that, but it's just like, could this be done differently? Not my choice. Thanks. I'm thankful I'm here, but I'm also observing all the time what's going on. Like, when I'm in the exhibit hall, I'm there to meet a couple people, grab as much swag as I can for my kids, and then watch, right? I do a lot of watching, like, oh, the Swedish institution speaking with the Japanese institution, right? And I love that dynamic quite a bit, actually. It's not just the US partners and schools. I love that other kind of, it's where the world can really come to meet. That happens at the API conference, and I'm sure at EAIE and those things as well. They're like small. And at the Australian one, which I was fortunate to be able to go to, because I was speaking at, not because I could have afforded it, but they're smaller NASA's. It's the same kind of concept there. It's just, NASA's such a big animal, right? There's so many pieces to it.
Hello, Anne. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
So, Pam, I know these two clowns, but I'm Anne, and I'm with the Asia Institute, and I messed up the time, you guys. Imagine me doing that.
That's no problem. Well, we'll be doing this again sometime down the road, so no worries.
There you go. Well, it's both sad, but okay to not be in Denver. Like, yeah, I wish I was there, but I don't know. Like, anyway. So
Yeah, no, it's tough for sure. It's I feel both ways. I'm kind of
right.
totally. I mean, I'm here and I'm helping my family because I have a guy downstairs fixing my hot water tank. It's out, right? So I can do this. This would have fallen on my wife, which is
right.
I need to thank her all the time because of all the stuff for going to conferences and all that kind of stuff, right?
And so as I always say, when it's stuff like that, it really is a glamorous life, isn't it?
It is.
Hot water heaters and things, like it's really glamorous. So
I will say that I do think, and this is important, I talked to some really close friends that from the international ed on the business school side from when I was there, and found ourselves pre-COVID together. And I said, listen to how we're talking. We're talking like, oh, the lounge at the Tel Aviv airport, or, we're like saying, when you're in Rome and you go do this, or you go and do that, or
I
you're
know
in New Orleans and do this. It's like we're really fortunate, right? And this kind of goes to part of the discussion I was having on kind of the financial side of things. We need to have, these events are in cool places, and I take advantage of that. And it's but it's really also the connections professionally, but also the friendships. That's a big thing, right? I mean, that's for me, it's a huge part, and so I'm missing that. But it is what it is. I'm okay not being there. There was a stint for 4 years where I didn't go. When I was at the University of Chicago, and so that was tough. But so I'm accustomed to paying attention to via Facebook and Twitter. So I'm trying to stay away.
Okay. And Brianna, it looks like you must be at Nebraska. Lincoln, is that right? Yeah.
I am, yeah. I'm with the University of Nebraska Lincoln, specifically with one of their colleges, but I actually am based in Mexico City, Mexico.
Oh, okay. Wow. Nice. What's the racquetball and international ed thing? I'm sure you guys have already heard this, so you can give me the short version.
No, I was just telling them I'm involved with a group called Keeping Our Promise, which works with Afghan immigrants to the Rochester, New York area. They find homes for them, jobs. And so I just started, because I play competitive racquetball, I started an activity where we're teaching them how to play racquetball. And so their English is okay. And we don't speak Pashto or Dari, so it's kind of interesting to see. But I thought it was an interesting way of involving them in the community. And, teaching the community a thing too. I was just telling David and Brianna, it's just, other people who are not involved directly in international education can make a contribution as well.
Right.
And so Mike is doing that by coaching them. And I think it's a lot of fun. And what I like to see is we see African men and women playing at the same time. So we don't see that gendered difference. I think it's good to see these type of things. So, and they're helping us because unfortunately racquetball is a dying sport. And so we need to inject some new blood into it. So it helps both parties. And I think that's always a good thing.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you ever want to learn about the organization, it's called Keeping Our Promise. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy working with them.
Nice. So it's my understanding, and I didn't look really closely, but I heard someone say that NAFSA didn't do the sectional receptions last night.
Really? That's surprised. I thought they did. I thought they were.
I don't know. I heard that a couple times last week with some of my gateway stuff. I was like, wow. And I mean, they're talking 5,000 instead of 10 or 12. So I don't know. Could actually be enjoyable.
Yeah, sometimes it can be overwhelming. I mean, I was just telling I always had a backache just because you're on your feet all day long. So I certainly don't miss that.
It's a lot. So, oh my goodness. Well, in any case, I have plenty to do this week. So you know, I'm just forging ahead.
No, I think we all are.
Yeah.
So, and
So Tom, do you have any speakers lined up for the fall?
yes, I didn't want to promote, well, not actually for the fall, but for the summer. Believe it or
Oh.
not, because next week we have the Summit of the Americas. We have someone who's going to be
That's right.
speaking to us about Cuba, but he's also the senior aide to the Democratic candidate in Florida. His name is Albert Fox, and he may actually be joining us. So this is going to be on June 6th at 2 o'clock. And then on June 8th at 2 o'clock, we have a specialist from Argentina talk to us about the Summit of the Americas as well. I'll email this to you, the links and all that, but spread the word. You know, we want people to know about these type of things. And then also we have another person in July going to be talking about leadership transformation, life transformation. She's a life coach. So we have a good agenda. And just so you know, Brianna, these are they're called Global Thoughts. They're free to anyone. There's no cost obligation. Just spread the word. You know, students can participate certainly, but we just want people to talk about these things.
Yeah. I had seen them posted. I'm not sure how I found the post about this event, but I'm really glad I did, because I just weren't on my radar, and it was great to just find someone who had liked or retweeted the post, because I think this is great, and I saw a number of those other programs for the rest of the summer, and I've already signed up for a number of them.
Good.
So thank you for your work that you do to kind of bring together this community.
No, you'll like them. And my favorite was she's an inspirational figure to me. She's from Afghanistan. She moved to once the Taliban came to power, she moved her school for girls to Rwanda. So I raised, I tried to raise money for it, and we could only raise $415 for her. But meanwhile, someone else in my town wanted to rebrand, so they did a GoFund campaign, and they raised $15,000. And I just said, look, this is it's too bad, because I think, not that that's a bad cause, but I think we really need to help these young girls from Afghanistan adapt to Rwanda and become educated. They need clothes, they need shelter, and things like that. So I'll be having, I'm going to try and have her again this fall. We'll see. She's very busy.
And please let me know if there's ways we can assist with that. I have a lot of former students in Rwanda, and a lot of university ties with Rwanda and Rwandan entities. So if we could connect our alumni or something like that, I can think of a number of students, like specifically, who would be really interested in maybe being involved in something like that. They've already had the international sort of experience of studying in the US, and I think they could find a lot of fulfillment and interest in helping those young women and that effort really, get off the ground. Let me know if I can help or connect at all.
Oh, no, I will, definitely. Thank you very much. And I see Vale has joined us. Vale will be our speaker on June 8th. She's from Argentina. She'll be talking about some of the Americas from an Argentine perspective.
Cool.
So she'll be speaking to us within the week.
Cool.
Okay. Well, anyway, like I said, I didn't want this to go too much longer than 6, because I know everyone's busy, and this is I really thank you all. This is your own personal time, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to pop in. I'm gonna head out. Take care, you guys.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, Ann. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. And Brianne, thank you very much. David, thank you very much. Vale, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry. I think I got confused with the time. I wanted to show you earlier, and then I thought we were 2 hours ahead. So I'm sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. We're gonna, we'll see you next week, and then we're gonna be doing this again either midway or toward the end of the summer, before the semester begins. Okay. So Brianna, it was nice meeting you. David, great to see you as always. Vale, good to see you. And
thank you so much, Tom.
We'll see you again soon. All right.
And Valeria, I hope to tune into your session when you do it next week, if I can.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you again, Tom, for letting me jump in. I feel like the oddball not knowing anyone, but
No, you did a great contribution. So we'll see you again soon. All right.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.